Good morning, everyone. Shalom. All of us managed through traffic, so I welcome each and every one of you. I'm very honored to be here. I'm very honored to be here with such a distinguished institution such as the Jerusalem Post. I want to pay tribute to the publisher, Herzog, who was the publisher of a large group of papers, including Ma'ariv, to Ronit Hassin Hochman, the Director General of the paper, to Steve Lindy, the editor, to the writers of an excellent newspaper, which has been here over 70 years, and personally has covered 4 generations of my family. So I'm very honored to participate in this event. Right now, in this very moment, as you all know too well, there is a battle going on in Paris. May we all wish well to the French security forces that they will manage to overcome this battle, to uproot the terrorists, to manage to contain the activities of those rogue organizations and terrorist organizations. We all participate in the deep sorrow of the French people. We participated in a very impressive event in the Rabin Square Saturday night, in which I've said that in French, that Paris restera toujours la ville de lumière. Paris will go back to being the city of light and the city of enlightenment. And that's what we feel together today in full solidarity with the French people and those who are combating terror worldwide. I want to deliberate on a few topics which I hope my friend Herb Canon will then specifically ask Prime Minister Netanyahu. I lead the opposition. We are the second largest party in the Knesset. We are entering a budget vote. We have submitted 32,000 reservations to the budget. The vote will start in the afternoon and may go on until tomorrow midnight, between Thursday and Friday. If by midnight and 1 the budget doesn't pass, we're going to new elections. The government never fell on a budget, but may I point out to you that this is a hung government of 61, and with 32,000 reservations of the coalition being under huge pressure, has decided to operate a clause in the Knesset bylaws, which is a very aggressive clause, and limit down or contain down the reservations to about 1,200. Anyway, even amongst 1,200, you realize that in the wee hours of the night, when it's 61:59, you don't really know what can happen. So I promised my friends in the coalition that they can come in slippers to the Knesset, and we will all work very, very hard tonight, doing our best to block the budget and doing our best to topple the government. But let's talk on the real issue. The real issue which I've been delving about since the start of the Knesset and throughout my political career is the fact that what looms over our being as the homeland of the Jewish people, as a Jewish democratic state, is the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And I lead a school of thought which is not willing to give up the mere notion that in order to secure the future of the Jewish democratic state forever, we must separate from the Palestinians. We must separate not out of desire to leave important territories that are connected to our soul and heart, but because of realpolitik, that at the end of it we cannot wreak havoc by living together one within the other. And if anyone wants to see how it will be and what will be the fate of a binational state, it needs to see Jerusalem in recent months. Jerusalem in recent months is not new. It was there all along, except that in the mental block of many publics in Israel, the question of the Palestinian status, as well as 350,000 Palestinians residing in East Jerusalem, never came about. It was left aside. In 2 years' time, we will be marking 50 years to the Six-Day War, and we have to ask ourselves, where is it going? And my question to the Prime Minister is, what is your vision 30, 40, or 50 years down the road? What is the vision? Is the vision a binational state? or the vision is unequivocally the Jewish democratic state? This is the question, and from this stems it all. The rest has to do with security arrangements, the rest has to do with borders, the rest has to do with the creation of a Palestinian state side by side with Israel. And that's why I've been saying constantly, it's either the Masada syndrome or something else. I'm not willing to accept the notion that we will live on our sword forever. I've never seen a leader of Israel under any times of most difficult circumstances. And none of you, or most of you, were not here in the weeks before the Six-Day War, where people thought that Auschwitz is back again. And none of you were here in the siege of 48. I can tell you that my late father, Chaim Herzog, depicts in his memoirs a battle in the King David Hotel in the moment the state was created. And the King David Hotel was, he describes it as a ghost town. So we take things in proportion. And never did an Israeli leader come to his people and say, we will only live on our sword. Ben-Gurion gave a vision, build a nation, bring immigration, develop society, toil the land, develop the desert. And so did Eshkol. And so did other leaders. And so did the late Yitzhak Rabin. And my argument with the Prime Minister is we will always have to fight. We will always have to have the strong army, the strongest. But we have to work with also with the olive tree and think about developing the land and give vision and hope to both peoples. And I believe that there is a silent majority in both sides of the Green Line. There is a silent majority with both peoples, Israelis and Palestinians, who are yearning for a change, who are yearning for a different course in history. And my challenge to the Prime Minister is, are you willing to change the course of history? Because if he is willing to change the course of history, we've said from the opposition that we will be there to help him, exactly like we helped Menachem Begin in the peace agreement with Egypt. But it cannot be that at this critical juncture, where everybody sees only fog, only a lack of hope, and this general feeling is of real despair, that we will not change the circumstances of history. And I beg to differ with all those who think that there is no chance in the world that we can reach arrangements. Between 0 and 100, there are many, many milestones on the way. And reality can be changed on the ground, and hope can be given to the people. And my demand is to identify the opportunity developed in the region despite the turbulent period. It's the most turbulent period in the region for a long time, and definitely one of the most turbulent periods between Arab and Jew for a long time. But seeing the two major threats to the moderate forces in the region, one coming from ISIS, and one coming from Iran, which is walking out of the cage, Hungary. There is a coalition of moderate forces, strong moderate forces in the region, which has a convergence of interest with Israel, clear convergence of interest with Israel. First of all, our immediate neighbors, Egypt and Jordan. If you look at it, if you look at this trio, it's a strong trio, Israel, Egypt, and Jordan. Combating terror, desiring peace, understanding the geostrategical challenges. Add to it the Palestinian security forces which are working to contain terror, and you have a fourth element. And from there on, go on to moderate nations in the region, in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, Morocco, and the like, and you identify a real table that can be sitting down and saying, okay, what do we do together? What's the joint interest? And they are the following: strategic interests, new configuration in the region of an alignment that blocks these two horrible forces with other forces, of course in cooperation with the world's leading forces, especially in light of the recent terror attack in Paris and the efforts of world leaders to combat ISIS. Secondly, intelligence, know-how, understanding what do we combat, understanding the regional changes. And within that, of course, within that, trying to reignite yet again the process with the Palestinians, between Israelis and Palestinians. Not necessarily only on a bilateral basis, because that's right now extremely difficult, and both leaders, in my mind, have failed to meet and rise to the occasion, but couple it with regional efforts, you have an ignition key that can move on and try to create change. And it is difficult. But had you said to an Israeli or an Egyptian 42 years ago that within 4 years Anwar Sadat will be stepping in the Knesset on the podium and offering peace, people would have told you you're lunatics. And that's why I beg to differ with all those who are not willing to give hope and treading on fear and selling to both peoples that nothing is possible except the sword itself. I'm not willing to accept it at all. And this is the challenge that I'm challenging as the leader of the opposition. And this is exactly what I'm demanding from the Prime Minister. And this is exactly what I'm demanding from Abbas. And I think that the call of history and the request of the peoples and the call of next generation demands that all forces of moderacy sit down and start talking and trying to understand how one can reach peace despite the difficulties. And there are ideas, and there are innovative ideas, and there are ideas outside the box. But let's stop blaming each other and start working, because otherwise what we are seeing right now is enormous tragedy, enormous tragedy. The fact that youngsters, adolescents, 15-year-olds assassinate 15-year-olds and 12-year-olds assassinate 12-year-olds by being brainwashed, full of hate, ignorance, and racism is horrible. And we have to change that course, and immediately. That is why, as part of it, I support the resolution to outlaw the Northern Islamic movement because of the way they've operated and what they've done to undermine Israel's democracy. And I call upon the government to outlaw, on the right as well, to outlaw the Lehava organization, which is a racist, extreme organization which spreads hatred between Arab and Jew and Arab for nothing, and undermines the main institutions of Israeli democracy. And I call upon the government to defend democracy, and once they've started with one step, they ought to continue with another step, because the extremists on both sides are the ones who are threatening Israeli democracy and threatening our existence here, coexistence between Arab and Jew. May I conclude by wishing each and every one of you well. Today we will fly to the graveyard of David Ben-Gurion. That's the day of his passing away, and we will be there to pay tribute to the greatest Israeli leader, the founder of the State of Israel. And his vision was, don't sit idly by, do, change, carry on. And he had a gloomy vision after 67 if we don't do that. And I really sincerely hope that all the main forces in Israel will join together in cooperating in changing history. Thank you all very, very much.